God. Maybe one of the biggest uh, work shoots in wrestling. Um, Perhaps it actually was legitimate. In fact, it seems like it was legitimate, but the way they turned this into an angle was really crazy to me. R-Truth in the main event of Money in the Bank comes back after apparently uh, not renewing his contract, not getting renewed because he didn't want to accept a lower from what I've heard. You know, he didn't want to accept a lower, like his new contract they were going to give him was going to be lower than what he was making initially, and so they weren't going to renew it. So he posted on X that he was had been released, and the fans were just outbreaking, and out the whole week you've heard R-Truth chants, "We want truth," and Cena had even acknowledged it on SmackDown last night, saying you can't handle the truth, and he indirectly acknowledged it. There was just all these chants for truth. And I gotta say, the way they executed this, it almost reminds me of, even though I don't think he got the support like this, but it kind of reminds me of when Drake Maverick had got released. I think it was 2020 or 2021, and he ended up getting released again. But when he got released the first time, they kind of turned that into an angle. Like, he got released, and he had these matches NXT, and one of the matches he lost, and it was like if he lost, like he would have to leave. But then they kind of turned it to an angle where, he ended up where if he won, um, he'll get a contract back. In this case, though, with R-Truth, it was just the situation of him not getting his contract renewed, and so it was a huge thing, because R-Truth's been with the company. He did lead the company in the early 2000s, like 2001, 2002, and went to TNA for several years. Became a two-time NWA World Champion, which was a big deal for him because he was a more serious character. And when he was in TNA, came back as R-Truth, um, and I think it was around 2008 when he came back, and he's been with the company ever since, and one of the most loyal guys. He had the heel persona in 2011, but you know, definitely been a fan favorite for some time, and it was a huge thing. And the main event, a match that you know was pretty average for a main event, but you did have a couple of spots with Cena and Logan, with Cody and Jey Uso. And the biggest thing about this, though, when you thought that Cena, because the way they kind of did their match at main event, they kind of had it where the match was super short. Cena, R-Truth got a little bit of offense in that match where he dressed up as like the old version of Cena, the face Cena, and Cena took him out, pretending like he wasn't gonna hit him with the belt. Then when the ref turned around, he low blowed him and won the match, and he just kind of walked out. It's like he was like that was it with him and R-Truth. The way they did this, with R-Truth coming out and actually attacking Cena with the mask and stuff, I gotta say, like, this was one of the biggest swerves they've done in quite some time. I did not see that coming. And there were some fans who thought that maybe the whole time this was a work. But I do think that there was definitely truth to this happening, like the whole non-agreement thing with the contract. But they basically took, a real life, they tend to do this. They took a real life situation. They probably took like all of the backlash, the fans, because they, when you think about the wrestlers who've gotten released and some of the backlash they get from fans, and a lot of times they don't bring them back. You know, Despite how crazy the fans are going about it, they don't care. they won't bring them back. But this one with R-Truth, there was just something with the dueling chance, and him coming out and taking out Cena while the ref was out, checking on Logan and Jey Uso, which Logan did hit a pretty nice moonsault on Jey. He hit a real nice moonsault on Jey. You know, um, he's definitely a really good performer. It's just the match was kind of just average, but the moonsault he hit on Jey did look pretty good. That was probably the highlight of the match. But most of it was just kind of him and Cena bickering and them just double teaming on Jey for like the first half of it, and Cody getting his offense in from time to time on Cena. Um, so they've kind of been like booking Cena matches like exactly the same since WrestleMania. So that's kind of the only thing. Like you could book them better than this, as a heel, because it's really making the matches. I get the whole thing is like he says he's gonna ruin wrestling in his last year, but to keep booking the matches the exact same way, it definitely kind of makes it weak. To keep booking them the same way, because they did the same thing with main event, the same thing with his match with Randy Orton at Backlash. That was literally a finisher fest. Like the whole match, they just kept hitting each other with their finishers, and Cena won the same way he beat Cody at WrestleMania. So it's just weird they keep booking it like that. You could definitely come up with more creative ways to win matches. But, this time it didn't work with R-Truth getting involved. But that was a big deal, though, a show that, I didn't get to watch Worlds Collide, but I'm definitely going to check that out because I heard, that was a really good show as well. Just didn't want to watch too much wrestling content in one day. But yeah, it was a big moment on a show that was good. Like I said, the main event, which seems to be the case for a lot of Cena's main events lately. Whether it's WrestleMania, the one with Orton and Backlash, although people seem to enjoy that one even more. But it was still a finisher fest. I mean, they just probably enjoyed it just because of some of the stuff that happened, but it did kind of get overbooked with the refs getting taken out like 2-3 times in the match. But yeah, this was definitely a moment that I don't think anybody saw coming. Because you had other moments that were a little bit more predictable. Seth Rollins winning Money in the Bank, although that I was not happy about. I definitely did not think Seth Rollins needed to win, although it may make sense for his group. I really thought that this should have been LA Knight's moment. The fact that CM Punk or Roman or nobody got involved to stop him, aside from Jacob and Jeff Cobb, or the Mateo, whatever they're calling him now. When they attacked his guys, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. Other than that, and other than Jacob Fatu turning face and taking out Solo, stopping him from winning, the fact that CM Punk and Roman didn't get involved, especially because last year CM Punk actually caused Drew McIntyre, to fail his cash in. I don't understand why they didn't do that this year. Have CM Punk come, and prevent Seth Rollins. You could have told two stories at once. You could have had CM Punk come out and keep Seth Rollins from winning, and then at the same time had Jacob Fatu's face turn. Like they wanted to give all the all of the focus on that story on SmackDown, but you could have also told this story on Raw. There's no reason whatsoever that Seth Rollins needed to win. They should have definitely had LA Knight winning. But at this point, it just pretty much shows that they've given up on LA Knight. Whatever. But if he wasn't going to win this year, then he's just not going to win, because the year he should have won it, 2023, they gave it to Damian Priest. And nothing against Damian Priest, but that should have been LA Knight's year that year. But they gave it to Damian Priest. Last year they gave it to Drew McIntyre. This year, which was a waste because that cash-in failed, because CM Punk, stopped them. The bigger story was CM Punk and his feud. And then this year you give it to a guy who really didn't need it, because he's already won it before. He's already, a multi-time world champion. It doesn't make any sense, especially, with the whole thing with Punk and all those guys talking about how he didn't need to win, and they don't even get involved. They don't even book them to, keep Seth from winning. It doesn't make sense to me. It's just really backwards booking, with CM Punk winning. So this R-Truth moment definitely, in my opinion, was probably the best moment, of this whole show. Um, you know, with the main event, because I wasn't too happy with the men's Money in the Bank with Seth Rollins winning. I think LA Knight should have won it. Seth Rollins did not need to win that match, but although ones may say it makes sense, I still say, you know, you're not going to get LA Knight win this year. And at this point, I mean, what else do you do with him? Because there's not much else you can do with him at this point if he wasn't going to win it this year. Seth Rollins did not need to win it. So just really backwards booking. But, you have Seth Rollins win. Becky Lynch beats Lyra Kieran. Wasn't too surprised there. The only thing I feel bad for Lyra is the fact that the only reason she's been on the last 2 premium live events is because of Becky. To think if the last 3 premium live events is because of Becky, like to think before that she wasn't even, as IC champion, she wasn't, able to be on that. Although, I mean, she just won the title at the start of the year. It's just kind of crazy, it took for Becky for her to actually be featured on a premium live. And they do bring the best out of each other. Becky does bring the best out of her. I personally think their Backlash match was better than this one. It was just, I don't know, it was something about that match. It just seemed like they hit harder in that match. This one was a really good one. Really good one. But I just felt like the Backlash one was better because I felt like they just went even harder in that match. And it was just unpredictable because everybody was thinking Becky was winning that time that Lyra won. But this time it's like, nah, they're not going to have Becky lose 3 times to Lyra. So it was a little bit more obvious that Becky was winning. But it was still a solid match. I just thought the one at Backlash just hit harder. And it seemed like they had more time in that match too. I don't know, for some reason with this match. And then, the women's Money in the Bank, Naomi winning was, I personally actually had Roxanne as my number 1 pick because of the whole thing with Judgment Day. But, her winning was, big for her with her heel persona. Pretty big moment, especially, how far she's come with the company at this point. The only question is whether or not she has a successful cash-in. Some people think that, she may not have a successful cash-in and be one of the first ones to fail her cash-in, which would say a lot, if they do have her be the first one to fail her cash-in. That would actually say a lot. But who knows? Who knows at this point? But like I said, and then Dominic, the match he had, could have been on TV, could have been on Raw, SmackDown, but it was still good, but it could have been on Raw, could have been on SmackDown. But yeah, the main event though, if R-Truth wasn't going to come back in this compassion, I would have probably put that match before Money in the Bank and had the men's Money in the Bank just close out if you're going to have the women's open it. Because just putting like a tag match with that, even with the star power, it's just like, I don't know. Cena's not the same Cena he was several years ago. If this was like prime Cena, like 2015, 16, even before then you would have gotten a lot more. But, he's already, he hasn't really been like that in a while now. But yeah, it was what it was. But R-Truth, I guess now he's going by his real name, Ron Killings, which kind of was what he was using in TNA, Ron the Truth Killings. But, big moment, him coming back, and, we don't. He looked serious. This is the first time we see him look serious in actually a long time. So, because fans are so used to him being goofy and with his funny persona, but this is the first time we've seen him actually look serious in quite a long time. So, I was not expecting that at all. So that really bumped up the main event for me, you know, and we'll just kind of see what happens with it. But it should definitely be interesting, with R-Truth coming back at Money in the Bank. Um, you know, but yeah, show was solid. Um, you know, but I think more than anything, if nothing else, with the main event, you're gonna remember what happened at the end. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I do think for the men and women's Money in the Bank, they could have done a little bit more than what they did with the ladders. Um, you know, they didn't really do as much outside of the ring or, with other equipment like they have done in previous ladder matches. Um, but, it's, what it is. So that's pretty much it, guys. Don't know why CM Punk or none of them showed up. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me with the Seth win, but that's pretty much it, guys. Sign off right last to Flex. Like I said, seemed like it was legit, but I guess he got a better deal, and now maybe has a Legends contract. Maybe he, I don't know, but he did something, and and he's back. So really big moment. So didn't see that cut, but that's it, guys. Sound Ravens Flex, like, subscribe. Talk to you guys. He's